Well, there it is. It took a while. My goodness, a long, long while. The 86th pick overall, but Malik Willis is off the board, out of the green room. They even stopped showing him the green room like 24 hours ago because it had been so long. The initial over under 6.5 that had opened, the expectations being Malik Willis, the Liberty quarterback, would go to the Panthers, went to the Titans at 86 overall in the 2022 NFL draft, late in the third round. Chris Trapasso joining myself, Will Brinson, to break it down, where Traps is going to gleefully gloat about how this is a great fit. And I'm going to sit here and pretend like I don't want to kill you because him going to the Titans was worst case. But I'm not even that mad. Like, anyone who won a Titans Willis bet or predicted it or is happy with it, whatever, the Giants passed him 4 or 5 times. Traps, what's your grade for Willis to the Titans?
It's A+ because he was my number one quarterback. Like you mentioned, I thought he was going to go somewhere in the first round. I think even in a couple mocks, I had him number 2 to the Lions, and a fair amount of people had that. At that point in the 80s, in the third round, the positional value is certainly there if you're just looking at the quarterback position from afar. But Willis, again, I've said it a million times, has the big-time throw ability, the improvisation. I don't think he's that much worse of a prospect, if at all, than Trey Lance. We talked about that earlier. Who was the number 3 overall pick, and the 49ers traded a bunch of selections in the first round to get him. The landing spot is a little weird. I do think learning from Ryan Tannehill, who was that wide receiver convert coming out of Texas A&M, that could help his development. But it's an A+ because I think he really has the ability to eventually be that new age quarterback that we're seeing pop up all around the league.
All right, so what caused this fall? I mean,
I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, we got that with Dean, that he had some shoulder injuries or a bunch of injuries. Willis didn't really apparently have any injuries. He didn't have any character concerns. I think there was just a lot of teams out on the simplicity of the Liberty offense. It was RPO based. I think that's part of the reason why we have not seen Matt Corral picked at time of recording this here toward the back end of the third round. That was another RPO based offense. You got to make multiple reads against unique coverages when you're entering the NFL and playing at the lesser school or the smaller school level. That probably didn't help Malik Willis either, but he had the highest big time throw rate in this quarterback class. I just think you have to aim for the moon at the quarterback spot in today's NFL, and the Titans certainly did that much later than anyone expected, and they certainly passed on him a bunch of times before ultimately making him their pick.
Is this the biggest draft fall of all time?
We were talking about this in the Slack room. It could be. I mean, we were kind of debating how we remembered Matt Barkley in 2013. I don't remember if Matt Barkley I don't think he went into the draft on draft night like he could be a first rounder.
No. He was maybe he could go day 2 guy. Maybe sneak into the first. Maybe sneak into the first round. Malik Willis was, if there's a quarterback who goes first round, it's him.
It's him.
And he went
yes.
Late third round.
I think it is, because any other fall that we've seen, there's been like a huge off-field concern or, lingering legal issues or major injury concerns. Like Darius Geis, the LSU running back, went in the second round. He had like maturity issues, injury issues. For someone to have a clean bill of health and have no maturity or legal issues that have come out yet, and I don't think any will, I think you could categorize this as the biggest fall that we've ever seen in the modern draft era.
Brinson, yeah. I know he waited 80 picks, but I don't know if I haven't seen this on Twitter yet, but like our good pal Brady Quinn, like that was just a notable draft fall and just like the waiting room shots. And then Aaron Rodgers, both those guys getting picked in the lower mid-20s, and they don't have to wait until the third freaking round, but pretty notable just in terms of like the exposure and how like just big in that moment they were falling.
I think that's a great call, Debo, because so Rodgers and Brady fell, and it was the story of the draft, and ESPN, because NFL Network wasn't even a thing at the time, maybe for Brady, but they were zooming in on both of them, catching every facial expression, watching their agents, seeing who was playing with what phones, who was, what kind of grimaces were occurring, just squirming in your seat awkwardly. And then Geno Smith in 2013 fell through the first round. It was like, F this, I'm out. I'm not staying in the green room. There's a different tone in 2020 where it's, I mean, I don't know if it's like we're less prone to show the guy in the green room who's just plummeting down the draft board. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know where I fall on this, but like, I guess credit to NFL Network and ESPN for not constantly just firing us into Malik Willis's green room situation where he's like, what the hell is happening? Why it's a third round? I mean, like if Russell Wilson had been, Russell Wilson was drafted at home with his ex-wife now, who was, like going crazy when he got a phone call. I mean, Willis, it wasn't shown. It wasn't a big deal. It was kind of surprising, but this draft was a little unique in that the quarterback class wasn't great. So I think I agree with you, Debo, in the sense that the falls for Brady and Aaron Rodgers were worse, if only because they were just so publicly televised.
That's what I'm talking about too. And just if this draft was still in New York City and the same venue that it was for 70 years in Radio City Music Hall, like it would be probably a different story. And the draft coverage has expanded, and for good reason outside of that. But yeah, I agree with you. I mean, Tunsil, because of obviously
that one's
a notable one. I had one other.
I would say in terms of and this is a little tough because we don't have a ton of historical draft props, but from a over like an expected draft position, even at the closing line, Willis was 16.5, and that's 70 draft spots. That is a ton. I would say this is the biggest numerical fall in draft history for a quarterback. And I think you can only quarterbacks are really the only people you could, put in this category. I would say this is the biggest one numerically, but from a like embarrassing and not just publicly a public fall, this was not nearly as big. Like it wasn't turned into a thing very often, I didn't think, on NFL Network coverage. And maybe that's because they wanted to be, less than harsh to Malik Willis, who, ended up going after Desmond Ridder or this whole quarterback class.
What my thing is that, like what I mentioned in the first answer, is that like this wasn't just a public fall and like, oh, the Titans picked him up in round 2. Like this is like the kind of the Tom Brady thing. Like every team, including the Patriots, passed on Tom Brady multiple times. It would have been one thing like, hey, it's a pretty big fall if
Titans traded AJ Brown and drafted somebody else. I mean, like
that to me is why, I mean, maybe not the most visible because like we mentioned that the networks didn't show him a bunch, but we had
the Panthers. I'm sorry. This is not.
They just
podcast.
No, it's
no.
That was pretty much it. That those teams, we were in the Slack room talking about this, like, oh, the Falcons were up again, they passed on him. Seahawks were up again, they passed on him. Multiple teams were passing on him 3 and 4 times. They had multiple selections in round 1 and round 2 and into round 3. So to me, that's why it's the biggest draft fall that we've ever seen, because this was not just one time all the NFL, or maybe 2 times. This was almost 3 and 4 times for maybe half or 2/3 of the league passing on Malik Willis.
Yeah, and an absolutely massive fall. I will say this. I think at least from it's lessened by the fact that AJ Brown is gone, but I mean, he's probably the clear-cut successor to Ryan Tannehill and has some Ryan Tannehill traits in terms of what he does, mobility, deep ball, the ability to throw a good deep ball, can make plays happen with his legs, down the field. He's not just a mobile horizontal guy. Mm-hmm. Certainly needs to work on his accuracy, but an elite athlete who, Tannehill came out of the NFL with like 12, or came out of college with like 12 starts from A&M. He was a converted wide receiver. So it's a very interesting landing spot if the Titans can keep that running game going and are capable of developing some wide receivers. Give us your grade for the Malik Willis pick to the Titans in the comments. Like the video, hit subscribe, and turn on alerts.